which one is most aligned with my intention and purpose? My intention and purpose in this is to give our whole family a pet, or to give my kids a sense of responsibility, or to have a dog to love on when my kids are getting busier as they get old. Whatever it is, whatever your intention and purpose was, you pick the choices that align closest to it, and you are being resilient, no matter how it turns out.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. My next guest is a resilience expert, Dr. G. She works with families, organizations, and businesses to identify the mindset and strategies to turn stress into an advantage. Renowned for her contagious humor, Dr. G works with groups across multiple generations to rewire their attitudes and beliefs and create resilience through personal accountability and a completely different approach to adversity. She is leading media personalities seen regularly on Today, Good Morning America, and The Doctors, and author of the recently released book, From Stress to Resilient. She is also featured frequently in the Washington Post, the New York Times, Forbes magazine, and countless other digital and print outlets. Dr. G is a board-certified attending family physician. This week, we chat about what resilience really is, how to understand our default stress mechanisms, and why they are important in making quicker decisions. Please welcome the incredibly talented Dr. G.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh my God, if you don't know who this woman is, she has a sizzle reel. You have to go check it out. She's done some incredible things and you have such great energy. You're charismatic. I'm so excited to have you to the show.
Thank you. We're going to really help a lot of people get the change they want.
Perfect. So this is like a 30-minute therapy session for free.
Totally. And you don't have to tell me about your mom.
Oh, good. Because I didn't feel like doing that today. Anyways, so let's start with some quick questions. I'd love to know, where are you from?
I was born in the Bronx in New York, but I was a corporate brat. My dad's job moved us all over. So I've lived in 16 cities in 7 states in my life so far.
Wow. You don't stop. And where are you currently parked?
I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I love it.
I don't think I've ever been. No, but they have, what's their hockey team? I should know this.
Penguins.
The Penguins,
yeah,
that's right.
The real thing.
Penguins. There's a lot of Canadians that are Penguins fans. I think it's because, wasn't Sidney Crosby a player there?
Oh yeah. No, we've borrowed several amazing players from Canada.
You're welcome. What was one of the toughest moments you had to face as an entrepreneur?
So I'm a mom of 4 kids. Actually, now I have to say, to be fair, 2 adults and 2 kids. My boys are 20, 18, 16, and 14.
Ooh.
And when they were 15 down to 8, I got divorced. And the financial realities changed profoundly. And the co-parenting situation changed somewhat. And I would say the hardest thing I had to face was that there wasn't in my kids' childhood going to be a time where I wasn't going to feel pulled in a bunch of directions. So instead of waiting for that feeling of guilt or distraction or feeling like a frayed cord to go away, as soon as this is done, I had to find a way to be the frayed cord and still do the work I want to do and be the mom I wanted to be.
Yeah, finding that time and that space is tough. And sometimes it just doesn't seem like it's that important. We flew in from Newport Beach, our family coach, to come up last weekend to spend the entire weekend with my family. So we had sessions that was individual sessions, couple sessions and family sessions because we believe that being proactive is important. And let me tell you, the moments prior to her arriving, I was like, oh, let's just cancel. I don't think we need this. We're good. Like, we're good now. It's been a good couple weeks.
Yeah.
Holy, did she ever crack us open? I realized, yeah, we ain't good.
Well, and, for my patients, because I'm a family doctor. So for my patients, I'll have patients, especially older men, say to me, do you really believe in this therapy thing? And I say, I think therapy is like exercise. Not everyone needs it all the time, but it can never hurt.
That's so true. And it's true. You don't need it all the time, but you need it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the way to stay healthy. Okay. So what is your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is actually from Michelle Obama. And I think it's partially because we're of an age. I'm the same age as her, give or take a tiny bit. And she said, at 54, I am still in progress, and I hope I always will be. And I am about to turn 52, and every decade has been better so far. I am lucky enough, and I encourage women everywhere, if you can, to get you a couple of friends who are a decade or two or three older than you. And I have a dear friend in her 80s and a good friend in her 70s, and they both tell me that, at least for women, if you can keep your health, every decade is better for one really particular reason, which is your actual actions get more aligned to your priorities. Another way of saying that is you give fewer concerns about other people's priorities if they don't match yours.
Oh, when you're so young, and I know this because I just did this IPL laser stuff to get rid of sunspots on my face. And I'm like, I knew this day was going to come. And this totally relates to that part. But when you're young and you're healthy and everything feels good and there's no physical issues, you're like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect me. And then it does. Yeah. It shows up. It shows up decades later.
Well, honestly, we have two options. There are two possible paths in life: to live to be old or die young. And I would really much rather live to be old.
My good friend Brad says, I want to die young as late as possible.
But I really don't. I want to die old, wise and aligned and connected and independent, right? And I really believe that one of the things that really helps women to thrive is to look askance at the youth culture and the beauty culture that tells us that we lose worth as we age. And it's a lie. It's a lie that makes a lot of people a lot of money. When you see something that's hurting you, look for who earns money from it.
And, what I was told, and you have friends that are substantially older than you to tell you this too, is that you also care less about that stuff as you get older.
That's what I'm saying. Give fewer concerns.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like, as I get older, I always say the women in my decade are the most beautiful, right? So when I was 20, I thought that. When I was 30, I thought that. It's not because I was avoiding something. I was like, oh my gosh, as we get older, we get smarter. And we actually, if we're intentional about it, we surround ourselves with like the right people. And
I know this isn't what we decided we wanted to talk about, but honestly, if you're looking for an amazing follow on Instagram, find Ashton Applewhite. She goes by This Chair Rocks, and she just turned 70. She's gorgeous, she's smart, and she's talking about this stuff.
Okay, I love it. There's a couple women in their 50s that are doing this too, because I'm in my 40s, and it's inspiring. I know, we could talk about this, but let's get to this other stuff. So what inspired you to do what you do?
So as a family doctor, after I'd been practicing for 5 or 6 years, I started to realize that I had been trained to, and as a family doc, I do like your kids' well child check, and I see you when your back hurts, and I see everybody from newborns all the way through the end of life. And what I realized is I had been trained to prevent illness and injury, right? Preventive medicine. And I had been trained to help people recover from illness and injury, but I hadn't been trained to help them be well, to thrive, to be live the kind of life they wanted. And that there's this gap between recovering and being well. So I went to the medical literature. What's that gap? It's called, in that literature, patient resilience, which I agree sounds like a cop-out. But I thought, okay, but what if that's true? Things can be both annoying and true. So what if that's true? What is resilience? What is that? Like that sounds sort of true. I had, for example, two patients one morning, two different patients, one with what anyone would agree, including her, are awful health issues, chronic terminal illness, and another patient with very mild intermittent health issues. And the one with the terminal illness was doing great by her own measure, not necessarily mine, but hers. And the woman with the mild intermittent stuff was terrible. And she wasn't depressed. She was just terrible. And I was like, great, that difference. What's that about? Resilience. Okay, what is it? So there wasn't a lot of research at the time. Most of the research on resilience in adults 15 years ago was on combat veterans or people with severe mental illness, not all of it directly applicable to my patients. So I decided to do it myself.
You did the research yourself?
Yeah, to figure out and to push other people and to tie together different things different people were doing to figure out what is it that really helps us live the life we want, no matter what cards were dealt.
A doctor did this? An actual doctor? Wow. That's impressive.
It really taught me so much that even if I couldn't do anything with it for other people, it would have enriched my life anyway. But I was like, wait, this stuff is too important. I can't keep this to myself.
100%. So when did you start this?
Really about 10 years ago.
Okay. So this is fascinating stuff. Let's dive into this because you talk about, so the resilience, which is a word I'm really starting to love now. I love the word.
Can I define it? Because people will be like, well, what do you mean when you say that?
Go ahead.
The definition that I use in my research and that a lot of social scientists, although I'm a medical scientist, a lot of social scientists use is that resilience is the ability to navigate change with intention and purpose. It's not just the ability to navigate adversity or difficulty or struggle.
Ooh, right.
That was the first really important thing I learned.
Okay, so say that again.
Yeah. Resilience is the ability to navigate change with intention and purpose.
So if you're sick, like the woman who has terminal illness, she just wants to live the best quality of life she can. So
maybe.
resilient.
I mean, an example I use personally of this is when my mom got a terminal diagnosis, the purpose I wanted, I couldn't have, right? I looked at it and the doctors were right. She was going to die from this, almost certainly. So I had to figure out, I didn't choose that. I wouldn't have chosen it. Neither would she have. But when change comes along, when a stressor comes along, because this is the second really important thing that I learned, connected to this idea that we don't just have to be resilient about adversity. We have to be resilient about all change. I was like, why is that? There's a neuroscience reason that is. Our brains interpret all change as stressful, all of it, even the good stuff. So I'm going to ask you a question, Renee. And I know I didn't warn you about this, but can you think of an example of a good change in your life in the last year?
We moved across the country.
That's a big change. And it was a good one. Like you'd have 100%. Identified that as the thing you wanted. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
When you made the decision, like you were done talking about it, you had decided a part of your brain, the amygdala, actually, when you woke up the next morning or when you took a breath, walked away from that conversation, it went, wait a minute, what could we lose? Was that the right decision? What's going to be uncomfortable about this? Even while you might have been feeling excited or relieved to have finally decided, because I bet it took some conversation to get there, or happy, or whatever it is, your brain still said, what could we lose? Can I trust this? And what's going to be uncomfortable? Those three reactions are like, have you ever been in the front seat of a car when the driver hit the brakes and your seatbelt locked?
Oh, whenever I'm in the car with my husband. So yes.
Right. Okay. Safety mechanism. And the car doesn't know or care if he's avoiding an accident or just reaching in the back seat for something to drink, right? Or annoyed by the traffic. The car just has a safety mechanism. You're going at speed, hit the brakes with a certain amount of force, the seatbelt's locked. Well, our brains have that same thing, but with three safety mechanisms. Our brain hears about any change, good change, bad change, neutral change, like your phone is updating its operating system. Neutral change, right? It's not necessarily good or bad.
Annoying, but yeah.
Right. Maybe annoying, maybe whatever, because it's 2 a.m, but it's just a change. Any change that is happening or is even possible, our brain, in an effort to keep us alive, says, what could I lose? Can I trust this? What's uncomfortable? It's just a safety mechanism. It doesn't make it right, which calls into question this idea of trust your gut, because your initial reaction is just a safety mechanism. So you have that safety mechanism, and so do the people around you, by the way. Your kids, how old are your kids?
9 and 10.
Great. They've been bugging you to go to, I don't know, Disney World.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, you guys, we're doing it. Spring break, we're going to Disney World. And one of them goes, well, but what about my soccer team has practice? And you're like, are you kidding me? You've been asking me to go to Disney World for actual ever. And we finally saved the money and made it happen. Don't feel betrayed. Don't feel angry. Don't feel hurt. You didn't do a bad job announcing it. They're not bad people. It's not a referendum on your leadership or on their character. It's a safety mechanism.
So we're in this process of getting a dog. And this has been a pitch to my husband for years. And he finally said yes. And like, now that the yes happened, guess what's happening? My brain's going to, who's going to walk it? Who's going to feed it? Who's going to vacuum up after?
That's the uncomfortable. Was this the right decision? Do the kids really want this? What about when it dies?
Yes. I thought about all those things. And like my chest is like hurting. It's like maybe it's just easier to not
Which
get a dog.
shoes am I going to lose? Yeah, for sure.
Yes, the shoe thing. Yes.
Yeah.
The side of the couch thing.
Those are just safety mechanisms. And it doesn't mean that your decision was the wrong one. It doesn't guarantee it was the right one either.
Brain do that? It's like the primitive brain, right? Why does it do that?
It's not the primitive brain. So your brain has a million functions, but it has one job. What's your brain's job, Renee?
Keep us alive.
Exactly. That's it. Just keep you alive. That's its only overriding function. So since you are, here's the good news, currently alive.
Yeah. Woohoo.
The bad news is that all change is suspect. Your brain knows it will be a change that kills us. So it looks at every single change through the lens of, is this the danger?
Oh, like a tiger?
Yeah. Even a new job. You apply for a new job. You want it. You leverage every possible avenue to get it. You get the call that you got it. And even while you are like fist pumping in the air, your brain goes, will this take too much time away from your family and you'll end up divorced and your kids will hate you?
Totally.
Did they really, did they, you hang up the phone and you're like, did they say I had it or just that I made it to the next level? Are they really going to give me the package they promised in the interview? I got to look at that contract. And then where will I park? Who will I have lunch with? What will my supervisor think of my Zoom background, right? Or my side hustle? Loss, distrust, and discomfort are normal. So for everybody who's listening, who is considering a change, which is probably everyone who's listening, because we're all considering changes at different points in our life about different things, right? You're considering your dog, you're still recovering from your move, you're thinking about implementing some of the things that your family therapist suggested. We're all navigating change all the time. So for everybody listening, when you notice your brain pointing out the loss, distrust, and discomfort, that doesn't mean you know that you shouldn't do the change you're thinking of. It doesn't mean you're too weak or too ill-prepared or too lazy or too anything. It means your brain is good at its job of keeping you alive. But I have a solution because our brains have a solution wired in. And that is, so I said it was the amygdala that's doing all this fear, loss, distrust, discomfort. You cannot turn that off any more than I know how to turn off the safety mechanism of the seatbelt in my car. Maybe somebody can, but I don't know how. And you can't turn off the amygdala, but you can turn it down. You can turn it down from a 10 to a 5 or a 3 or even a 1 by asking yourself this question. What choices do I have? Even before you answer the question, just the act of asking yourself the question turns up your ventromedial prefrontal cortex and turns down the amygdala. And it gets you into your thinking, reasoning brain. Right? So with the dog, when you wake up, middle of the night, have to go to the bathroom, get back in bed, and now your chest is hurting. What if the dog dies? What if I end up walking it all the time? What if this becomes a point of contention so much between my husband and I? It's not what I told him it would be. He holds me responsible. What if I hit the dog? If you ask yourself, what choices do I have? And then that will quiet that emotional response. It'll damp it down a little bit. It won't silence it, but it quiets it. You'll be able to either say, okay, I know I have a lot of choices. I can think about them in the morning and you'll be able to get some sleep. Or you'd be like, you know what? I need to list them for myself so I can get some sleep. I could say to the kids, you know what? I'm not ready for a dog right now. And I could navigate that change. We could foster a dog. We could make it clear to the kids that we're going to try a few dogs, but the first couple are not going to work out. We know that, right? I could tell my husband I need 3 months total grace period, that no matter what the dog does, he's not going to hold any of it over my, whatever it is, you list the choices. As soon as you align, the next morning you get up and you're like, okay, so the not getting a dog choice, I'm not willing to go with that one. And my husband's never given me a 3-month grace period about anything, so that's not a good idea. But we could have a job wheel. We could, whatever other choices you came up with, you think, which one is most aligned with my intention and purpose? My intention and purpose in this is to give our whole family a pet, or to give my kids a sense of responsibility, or to have a dog to love on when my kids are getting busier as they get older. Whatever it is, whatever your intention and purpose was, you pick the choices that align closest to it, and you are being resilient, no matter how it turns out.
Yes, we went through this list last night of we want a dog that doesn't bark, doesn't shed, doesn't bite, doesn't pee in the house, and shows us unconditional love. And I'm like, good luck. Good luck, Noah.
I got a stuffed dog.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a hamster. Looks like a dog. No, this is great. I love that. What choices do I have? Man, I used to
asking. Even if you can't think of anything. You know, when my mom got diagnosed with this terrible illness, and I lost her 8 years ago, I had to think about what was my intention and purpose. And so my intention and purpose in that was to be a daughter, not a doctor, and still keep being an okay mom, because my mom was 500 miles from my kids. So how was I going to navigate this? And I didn't succeed at this all the time. It's a compass. It's not a contract. So if you think of it as a compass, every time you feel like navigating this change, something big like a job change or a move or a relationship change or sending a kid off to do something that's the right thing for them, but really hard on you, whatever it is, or navigating a terrible illness in yourself or someone you love, it's not a contract that you will always be, that I could always be a daughter, not a doctor, and an okay mom. But every time I felt like everything was upside down or this was really hard, I was like, what was my purpose? I remind myself, and then whatever choice is in front of me, what I'm going to do about dinner, when I'm going to go visit my mom or stay back with my kids, if it's as aligned as it can be with my purpose, then I know I'm doing the best I can.
Ooh, okay. Oh, there's so much we talk about here. For instance, this morning, my 10-year-old, he went to school and he forgot his basketball. And it's almost like his pacifier for him. He needs it. And he thought he had packed the basketball, but it turned out to be my other son's soccer ball. And you can't bounce soccer ball. So he was panicking and he's like, and then all of a sudden, like my anxiety was coming out driving them to school. And he's like, can you just turn around? It's like, no, we're going to be late. Can't turn around. So like I was going through all these options and I go, we talked about this earlier, how it's like, you have a good 30 minutes in the morning to pack your bag and get ready for school. So if you forget something, it's like, that's your responsibility. So what can you do to make sure this doesn't happen last time? And then we go through all these choices. We literally had like 10 basketballs. And he's like, I'll put 10 basketballs in the trunk of the car. That way I'll never forget. Meanwhile, I don't want to be driving around hearing these balls rolling around in the back of my car all day whenever I turn a corner. So I'm like, that's not an option. But then I love how you say, considering the choices that are aligned with like your purpose, because he's like, can you bring the ball to school? And I'm like looking at my calendar. In order for him to have his ball before recess, which starts right now, I would have had to come home and then gone right back. And I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. We have a person that works with us at home. And I was like, hey, Betty, do you have time to run the ball to Max? And she goes, yes, I can do it. So like listing those choices, because to me, the purpose was Max wants to play in the NBA. And I said to him, in order to play in the NBA, you have to carry your basketball with you everywhere you go. You have no choice. You have to bounce that thing and practice wherever you are. You come for a hike on the mountain, you bring your basketball. So to him, he's like, well, I can't play in the NBA if I don't have my ball. My intention was for him like to support his dream. And I was like, he needs to get the ball. Like I know other people, my husband have been like, that's stupid. His mistake for forgetting it. I'm like, no. He needs to have his ball and I'm going to make this happen.
I love that. And I hope that if it was something else, right? Like, so if he forgot his lunch, I don't know if he brings his lunch, but if he forgot his lunch, you'd be like, yeah, that you got to navigate. You're going to have to go to the cafeteria, talk to the people who run it, ask if you can be a hot lunch kid today, and then ask how much that costs. And you can get that money out of your allowance or your piggy bank or whatever, and go pay for it the next day. Because that, maybe in that moment, your intention would be to teach him more responsibility. He's got that half hour in the morning. One of the things he has to do is get his lunch. But about the basketball, you have a higher ethic about that one. Mm-hmm. That's teaching him the perseverance towards that dream. So you picked your intention and purpose in that moment. Here's the amazing thing. And I think what we were talking about aging, this is something that I get in my 50s with a calmness and a groundedness that I didn't get in my 30s. And that is, I get 1,000 bites at every apple. I don't have to be right every time. This is a compass, not a contract. So one of the best things about parenting and one of the best things about being an entrepreneur, and it's one of the worst things, I'm going to have 500 of these decisions every week. So if I mess this one up, I'll get another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with Max, he wouldn't have really remembered. I mean, he may have been a little bit disgruntled at the end of the day, but yeah. And like, having our family coach come to us, he taught us all these things too. It's like, but it's important to him. And like, just having his basketball, like, who cares what those tough parents say about, oh, he's going to learn a lesson, because it's not about that. It was actually about making those choices that support the purpose. And I love that. It's a beautiful way of putting that. Okay, so we define resilience, which I love. How can we get other people to navigate change more easily?
Yeah, it's one thing to learn the skills. So here's the next cool thing I learned in this research about resilience. I was a little afraid that it was a character trait, like your eye color, like you were just born with it. And we tend to talk about resilience that way. We used to, 30 years ago, talk about intelligence and academics that way. We thought that good students, gifted students, that it was a fixed commodity, right? That you were just however smart you were, and there was nothing you could do about it. If you were dumb, you were dumb. And when I was educated in the 70s and 80s, you were tested for a reading group in kindergarten, labeled, and never tested again. We don't do that. Dr. Carol Dweck and some other amazing researchers started publishing research in the 90s about growth mindset. It's a term that a lot of your listeners will have heard, where they proved that you could not just learn stuff, you could learn to learn. And I was like, boy, I really hope resilience is a learn to learn and not a it is what it is. And that does turn out to be the case. There are a few traits that impact your resilience that you can't do too much about. And past experiences do to some extent impact your resilience. You can't change your past experiences. However, there are 8 skills that make up what we call resilience, this ability to navigate change with intention and purpose. And you can, at any point, you probably have a little or a lot of each of those 8 skills, but you can at any point polish or develop any of those 8 skills and be better able to navigate change without feeling as overwhelmed, exhausted, or stressed by it, right? Without feeling all the pressure, without feeling oppressed by it.
Right.
That's all great. But what you're asking me is something incredibly important and different, because I can't, except maybe in my kids or my students or my athletes, if I'm a coach, if I don't have total purview over somebody, I can't make them build those skills. So another thing, and this research I did, I want to give a shout out to a PhD lab at Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. We set out to figure out, what does resilience look like in professional companies and organizations and businesses? And what can leaders do in that setting to help other people navigate change better? And we found that there are strategies that work.
So you want to grow your business, but you're stuck. Maybe it's your lack of organization or the sheer overwhelm of doing it all. Maybe it's because you have kids and you wonder how you'll be able to manage parenting and entrepreneuring. It's a good thing you're tuned in, because if this is you, I have a solution. It's my private coaching. This program is designed to help female entrepreneurs get unstuck, inspired, and motivated to grow their dream business. All you have to do is go to wewildwomen.com/coaching. That's www.wewildwomen.com/coaching and check it out. When you click the button, book a free discovery call, you'll be prompted to schedule a really fun chat with me. So I say do it. Best case scenario is we will make a plan to crush your business goals this year. And I'd love to hang out with you. So go ahead, go to wewildwomen.com/coaching.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to list these 4 strategies for you, Renee. And then if you would, pick one and I'll talk more about it. Because they're not in any particular order and you don't have to use all 4 of them. You can use them like a toolbox. You pick out the one that works best for you in your hand at that moment. Okay. These 4 strategies are empathy, transparent information, processing time, and reasonable autonomy. Which one do you want to hear more about?
I'm curious about processing time.
Yeah. So the faster we have to make a decision, the more we stay in our amygdala. If you say to your child, oh, hey, I just found out that the time of and I won't say basketball because I know that's his dream, but let's say he also plays tennis. The time of your tennis match is the same time that your best friend's birthday party got switched to. Which do you want to go to? You have to tell me right now, his mom just texted me, they need to know. The faster your child has to make that decision, the less likely they are to feel solid, connected to their actual intention and purpose in the end, after they've made the decision. An entrepreneur example of this would be you get online, talk to somebody who is a coach in something or a consultant in something, and they say you have to make a decision right then. Listen, this costs $90 million, but it's only $9,000 if you buy it from me today. And you have to, by the end of our call, if you signed up, if I have your credit card information before we hang up, that's only $9,000. That is I don't know, gajillion % savings. I was obviously a math major. And, and I need you to know, you're all in your amygdala. However they've made you feel, mixed with your loss, distrust, and discomfort, whether that's more about navigating a change without that consultant or navigating this thing with them, whatever it is, wherever your brain mostly is, that's what you'll base your decision on. If you have some processing time, you will be able to align the decision you make with your actual priorities.
So interesting. So have you read the book by Dan Ariely? I think it's called The Paradox. No, it's, I've got to think of what it's called. Something about the choice, making choices. Essentially, the whole idea of the book is he states that giving more options reduces your possibility to make a choice. So like any great restaurant doesn't have a cajillion things on their menu. They have like a set menu.
That's not about helping you make choice. That's about limiting their cost.
Well, no, I get that because they actually put the thing in the middle that has, because people don't want to choose the cheapest thing and they don't want to choose the most expensive thing. They choose the thing in the middle because it's a reasonably priced thing, but ends up being the thing that has the highest profit margins. But outside of the restaurant, the person actually making the decision, right? Do you ever go to those like just restaurants that don't know what they're serving, Mexican or Thai or pizza, and you open up the 18 slabs of, and you're like, well, okay, I'm going to go to Yelp and see what somebody says because I have no clue.
Or I'm going to get the thing I would have made for myself at home because I recognize it. So
or you leave.
Listen, when you're trying to help someone else navigate a change and getting them through that loss, distrust, and discomfort, not all of them, right? You cannot turn it off, but trying to get them towards choice, get them, I think of it as a game board, and they've got one big game piece and two little ones. They can leave the little ones back in loss, distrust, or discomfort. But you're trying to get them to move their main game piece over to choice or engagement. Processing time does that by offering them a chance to get into their thinking brain.
So it's kind of like the go with your gut, as they say, right? It's like
actually, I want them to not go with their gut. Their gut reaction is their amygdala. I want them to have a chance to question it and see if that's actually accurate, which it might be, or if it is just the safety mechanism in their brain.
What was the fourth option, the autonomy one?
Reasonable autonomy. So if you want to help someone else get into choice, then you give them a small choice. So for example, if you're saying to your team, hey, I know you all know that budgets are due October 31st and it's October 29th. And I just found out that the total number that our budget can add up to was reduced by 25%. And you don't have time for them to really like feel their feelings about that and have a lot of processing time because you have now a day and a half to get that in. Right? They have to totally restructure the budget. You need everybody's pieces and parts today. So you might, and you know that they're feeling all that loss and distrust and discomfort, and they're not where you need them to be, which is thinking about what can we lose and what can we pick and how do we make it happen? So instead you say, hey, so I got this really difficult news. This is the situation. Boy, this is hard. That's an empathy piece. Would you guys like to meet and talk about this at noon or at 3? Just by asking them, and it's not patronizing, just by saying, do you want a little bit more time now or do you want a little bit more time after we have our initial conversation? You've got them into their thinking brain because they are feeling loss, distrust, and discomfort about this reduced budget. Who am I going to have to fire? Is this going to impact my salary or my comp? Is it going to impact the projects I wanted to do, my advancement, my growth, how I accomplish our mission? Wait, she's asking me a question, noon or 3. Okay, I'd rather, and then they figure out like what works best for me. That's what's aligned most to my purpose. That's what that question means. And it gets them up into the front of their brain and makes them make a decision that's a thinking decision. And that helps them. It does not get rid of all the loss and distrust and discomfort, but it quiets it enough to get them thinking.
I've done this before with my son, Max, as an example. Sure. He is very particular with what he wears. And pretty much he's just an Under Armour guy because he knows it fits and the material he likes. So this is not a plug for Under Armour, but I remember it was actually the year I decided for school photos to not dress them the way they would never dress, like the cute little collared shirts and their hair parted to the side. Like that's just not who they are. So, but I remember I put out as like, it's going to be a gamble trying to get this kid into a decent shirt.
Right.
What am I going to do? I put out 2 outfits that were the fancy shirts with the fancy pants. And I brought him into his bedroom. I'm like, decide which one you want to wear today. And like, instead of him being like, oh, he doesn't even know that he had an option to wear something else. It was like, and he made the decision. And he like begrudgingly put stuff on. He's like, these pants, I hate these, but he made the decision. Otherwise, it would have been like, what do you want to wear for your photo shoot? And he would have just been like, oh, I want to wear my hoodie.
And you as a leader may call this getting buy-in or accountability or input. This is why it works. You are engaging using autonomy and agency to help people move through this resilience cycle.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to use that more often, especially with parenting. Thank you very much. Okay, so really quickly, 2 more questions. I'd love to know imposter syndrome. Do you believe this is a thing?
Yeah, of course it is. As a matter of fact, the more educated you are in something, the more you become aware of other people who are also really good at what you do. And because you hear your inner monologue and you don't hear theirs, this is basically the fake book Facebook issue. You know, how what we see on social media is highly curated. What people say out loud in meetings, what they show us, what we think we know about them is highly curated. And so everybody wants to present themselves the best they can for the most part, except with the people they're most comfortable and most vulnerable and honest with. So you see this highly curated form of someone else from the outside as compared to the messy, mushy middle of all the truth of you. You're never going to come out looking as good. So you, of course, think they're better at this, they're smarter at this, they're faster at this, it's easier for them, they're better suited to it. And boy, when people find out who I really am, or when something happens that exposes my flaws, they're not going to value me the way they do.
So we need to always...
Doesn't make it true. But
no, totally. I mean, I wake up every day. I'm like, I still look at my kids. I'm like, oh my God, you're mine. And like the oldest is 10. Like I'm still an imposter parent, an imposter entrepreneur. What are some tips then really quickly that you know people can do to start kind of silencing that voice in their head that they're not good enough?
I would actually just roll with it, right? I would hear it and be like, oh yeah, that's a feeling. Feelings aren't facts. Just a feeling. Notice it, let it go by. I'm not a yoga practitioner because I'm not patient enough. Yoga is really hard for me because it's like doing one thing at a time and doing it really slowly. And
sounds painful, actually.
It does. It's not my skill set. My boss, who's 15 years older than I am, told me years ago when I first started working with her, she's like, oh, you can't do it till you're 50 for people like us. Well, I'm now over 50 and I still can't quite. Maybe by the time I'm 60. But
you don't have to.
One of the things from meditation or yoga that we know that really improves people's mental health and is totally a skill you can just learn. And that is to notice a feeling like you notice a tree you drive by, a tree that's broken and looks terrible, a tree that's beautiful. You're not going to stop and interact with it, but you notice it and then you keep driving. And so if you can, instead of trying to fix your feelings, because you can't really do that. I mean, therapists may fight me on that, but in general, I think it's really a big task to try and fix your feelings. Feel your feelings, have empathy for yourself, and then figure out, well, how can I navigate this with intention and purpose? Like, you know,
I love it.
Being the kind of person I want to be.
And then just drive by it.
Yeah.
Give it the finger if you have to.
Right.
Like
and if it was really noteworthy, ugly, gnarled, broken down, burnt up tree, you may mention it to somebody who's important to you later. Oh my gosh, worst tree.
Yeah. Okay. I hope we don't see that tree today. Last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
To be a wild woman for me means aiming higher. I think you rarely achieve something that's higher than what you aimed for. So I would like to aim high in my revenue goals, but also in my world changing. in my dinner cooking and also in my relationships with my adult kids. I want to aim really high.
I love that. Well, Dr. G, if people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
AskDrG.com.
Awesome. And check out her sizzle reel. I know she's updating it, but I love it. It gives you a quick synopsis of everything that she's accomplished and some really cool nuggets. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time: the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.